Hey there. Welcome back to Raymond's Films Recap, with me Ray as your narrator. Today we're going to recap a film titled Hachi. Please beware of the spoilers ahead. Watch out. And take care. The movie began with a cute puppy wandering alone. He got lost on the train station. The dog then picked up by a man called Professor Parker. The station didn't have animal services. Then he took the dog home. When he arrived, his wife were mad, because they are already agreed that there will be no pet on their home. Professor Parker explained that he found the dog on the station. He promised that the dog is not going to stay with them forever. He only keep him until he find the owner. The day after, turns out their daughter really liked the dog. The mother still insisted for them to not adopt him. She won't find the owner of the dog. Then the professor now leaving leaflets everywhere. The leaflets contain information about a lost dog, with hope that the owner, or someone who might know the dog, can see it. The professor then tried to get some information about the dog. He asked his Japanese colleague from work. He said that the dog is a special breed. He's an Akita dog, a breed that is now very rare and about to go to extinct. On the tag, there's a Japanese symbol called Hachi. Hachi means 8. It's considered a lucky number on Japan's culture. The Japanese man then suggested that professors should take care of the dog, because that dog is known to be very loyal to their very first carer or owner, which the professor is. But his wife still insisted not to adopt the dog because a pet animal is known to be reckless. He even already ruined some of her stuff. Silently, the professor still took the dog anyway. He kept him on the barn where they spend some time together. He didn't have the heart to just abandon him, leaving him alone outside. He took Hachi watch TV together, and other stuff. Things make the professor bonded even more with the dog. He took Hachi place outside during on his day offs. After Hachi stays with them for some time, there's someone called. They say they want to adopt the dog. That call was picked by his wife. But seeing how much the dog meaning for her husband, she changed her mind. Because her husband seems to be very attached to him. She said the dog is already taken by someone. That means Hachi is now officially became theirs. Time goes by, Hachi are now grows up. The professor still really close with him. Even the wife now take care for Hachi too as much as her husband. Hachi seems to have a really strong instinct towards the professor. He started to see the pattern of when professor came from work. He always wait for the professor in the train station, but there's still something strange about Hachi. Hachi didn't like to play catch the ball, a universal game for the dog. Hachi didn't have any interest on it at all. The professor asked about this to his Japanese friend. Turns out Akita dog is known that they didn't like sport that much. Something special about the dog is their pure loyalty. But they're still picking up the ball when there's some strong reason to it. Every morning when he's about to go to work, he didn't allow Hachi to follow him. Hachi begs to accompany him to the station. Eventually, every time he's about to work, Hachi always accompanied the professor. People around started to recognize Hachi. Every time the professor got back from work, there was already Hachi waiting on his favorite spot. Every day he's always there. Hachi didn't miss even a single day. But then one day, Hachi wasn't there. The professor confused, because this is the first time he didn't show up. When he got home, it turns out that Hachi is scared of a raccoon. The professor then catch it. Now the professor only child already married. She was pregnant at the time. That makes the professor and his wife really happy, because they are about to be grandparents. Their life are now completed. Because indeed the professor is really love his wife. One day when he's about to go work, Hachi suddenly didn't want to accompany him to the train station. He kept on barking on him. He didn't want the professor go to work that day. This was the first time Hachi did that. The professor's still going to work anyway. Where this time, for the first time, the professor goes to the station alone again. That makes people who often saw them wondered, why isn't he with Hachi? Meanwhile, Hachi took a ball. That makes professor wife wondered, because that's the first time she saw he did that. Turns out Hachi runs to the station, catching up the professor. He's surprised because usually Hachi is the one didn't want to play the ball. That makes him really happy. Even though Hachi kept on barking on him, not letting him go to work. Finally the professor decided he needs to go now. Now Hachi sitting alone seeing the professor train goes away. Then where he's giving a lecture, he explained on how little thing can give more life to the life itself. As an example, he brought Hachi's ball. Later that day on his class, he's got a heart attack. That makes people there shocked. In the evening, Hachi's waiting for him on the station. The professor didn't arrive on time today. But Hachi is still there. He waited the professor to come. He waited until the last train passed away. The professor still didn't show up. Then there's a car coming for Hachi. Turns out it was professor's son-in-law, picking him up. Then tomorrow after that, Hachi woken up by professor's daughter with tears in her eyes. Then they got out of there with her husband and her mother. She went to the cemetery. It was the professor's funeral. He died having a heart attack that day. Whereas Hachi keeps on waiting for him on the train station. After last train passed and the station about to close, the station's officer says something to Hachi. He doesn't need to wait for him anymore, because he's already gone for good. The late professor wife decided to move out from the house. There is too many memories there. She have to move from the house so that she could move on from the loss of her husband. Hachi is moving away as well. He is now moving in with the daughter. There they are now already have a son. Hachi went on his days as always, but it's still different to his days with the professor. He is just now mostly sad all the time. Then one day Hachi went out leaving the house. Hachi was tracking the train railways. When the night comes he sleep beneath the train. Hachi keeps on his journey. He walked through the rail to his way on Professor Old house. There Hachi saw that the house was already filled with people. New people with unfamiliar faces. Hachi now waited on his usual spot till Professor comes from work. Some people who recognize Hachi often feeding him. Then the professor's daughter picking up him again. She bring Hachi to their home, but Hachi is still sad all the time. He can't stay there with them anymore. He let Hachi go, to do what he have to do. Hachi then came back to the station on his usual spot waiting for the professor. He remembered, once he walked through the store he usually walk with the professor. On the night he sleeps beneath the train. On the morning he sits on his usual spot. The spot where he used to wait for the professor. Now the story about Hachi who keep on waiting the professor are spreading. There's a news reported on him. Where the news now get to the professor Japanese friend. Then, people are sending money and things for someone to take care of Hachi. There's plenty people touched by Hachi's story and loyalty. It's been years since Hachi first waited for the professor. One day the professor Japanese friend visits Hachi. He wishes Hachi to live a long life. Now it's been exactly 10 years since the professor passed away. Hachi is still loyally waited for him. One day the professor's wife came to town to pay a visit to his late husband. Then his Japanese friend comes. She saw Hachi still there on his useful spot. He is still waiting for the professor to come. Hachi has grown to be a really old dog now. His fur was gray and dirty. He seems to be really desperate. All this time, Hachi still keeps on waiting him to come. This makes people who know him whip their tears. Later that night, when Hachi about to sleep, he decided to once again goes to the station. Finally, after 10 years he waited him to come. He is having some flashback during his time with the professor. He remembers how close he was with him. And then after his long wait, he closed his eyes forever, and on that point, the movie is over.